A billionaire CEO was interviewing a woman. Until she revealed she worked in the adult film industry. A billionaire CEO was interviewing a woman. Until she revealed she worked in the adult film industry. The glass doors of Metatech Solutions towered before Claire, their pristine surface reflecting her nervous expression. She smoothed down her navy blazer, purchased specially for this interview, and took a deep breath. The lobby stretched out before her, all chrome and clean lines, with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. "I'm here to see Mr. Jake Anderson," Claire said to the receptionist, proud that her voice didn't waver. "I have an interview at 10. "Of course, please take a seat." The receptionist gestured to a row of modern chairs. Claire's heels clicked against the polished concrete floor as she made her way to the waiting area. She'd been to countless interviews over the past year, each one ending the same way, with barely concealed disgust or outright rejection once her past came to light. But she'd learned from those experiences. Now she carried herself with practiced poise, even as her heart raced beneath her crisp white blouse. The elevator dinged, and a young man in a well-fitted suit appeared. "Ms. Claire Thompson? This way, please." Following him through the maze of open-plan offices, Claire noticed the energy of the place. People gathered around standing desks, animated discussions happening in glass-walled meeting rooms. It felt alive, innovative, different from the stuffy corporate environments she'd interviewed in before. The assistant led her to a corner office with stunning views of the city skyline. "Mr. Anderson will be with you shortly." Left alone, Claire resisted the urge to pace. Instead, she stood by the window, watching the city buzz below. The door opened behind her, and she turned to face Jake Anderson, one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country. He wasn't what she expected. Dressed in a simple button-down shirt and dark jeans, he had kind eyes and an easy smile that made him seem more approachable than his net worth would suggest. "Claire, thank you for coming in today." Jake extended his hand, his handshake firm but not overwhelming. "Please, have a seat." They settled into comfortable chairs around a small conference table rather than across a desk, another departure from the usual power dynamic she'd encountered in interviews. "Your resume is impressive," Jake began, glancing at the tablet in front of him. "Your project management experience at your last position shows exactly the kind of leadership we're looking for." Claire's stomach tightened. This was usually where things went sideways. She'd learned that honesty up front was better than having her past discovered later. "Mr. Anderson, before we go further, there's something I need to disclose." She met his eyes directly, drawing on every ounce of courage she'd built up over the years. "My work history includes a period in the adult film industry. I've since moved on, but I believe in being transparent about my past." She waited for the familiar shift, the slight recoil, the uncomfortable cough, the hasty wrap-up of the interview. But Jake's expression remained unchanged, open and attentive. "I appreciate your honesty, Claire. Could you tell me more about your journey? What motivated your career change?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked about her journey before. They'd always been too busy showing her the door. She started, then found her footing. "I entered that industry young, thinking it was my only option at the time. But I never stopped learning or growing. I put myself through night school, earned my business degree, and started volunteering at organizations that help women transition out of the industry." As she spoke, Jake leaned forward slightly, his attention fully focused on her words. There was no judgment in his expression, only genuine interest and something else. Understanding, perhaps? "That must have taken incredible strength," he said when she finished, "and remarkable organizational skills to manage both education and work simultaneously." Claire felt something shift inside her, a loosening of the tension she'd carried into every interview. For the first time, someone was seeing beyond her past to who she was now, who she'd fought to become. Jake smiled and nodded encouragingly. Please, tell me more about your experience with those organizations. What did you learn about effective support systems for women in transition? Claire shifted in her chair, her fingers absently smoothing the fabric of her skirt. The late morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow across Jake's office. His reaction to her past had thrown her completely off balance, in the best possible way. The support systems we developed were comprehensive, she continued, finding her voice growing stronger with each word. We focused on practical skills, resume building, interview preparation, financial literacy, but the emotional support was just as crucial. Jake typed a few notes on his tablet, his expression thoughtful. That's exactly the kind of insight we need. How did you measure the success of these programs? We tracked both immediate and long-term outcomes, Claire explained, her professional demeanor returning as she discussed familiar territory. Success wasn't just about job placement. We looked at retention rates, salary growth, and overall life stability. Impressive, Jake said, setting his tablet aside. He leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxing. You know, most people who come in here try to sell me on what they think I want to hear. Your authenticity is refreshing. Claire studied him carefully, trying to read between the lines. Was this just corporate politeness? But there was something in his eyes, a weariness that didn't match his successful exterior. I've learned that pretending to be someone else never works out in the long run, she replied. Jake's laugh held a touch of bitterness. You'd be surprised how many people make a career out of exactly that. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Especially in my world. Claire watched as he loosened his tie slightly. The gesture seemed unconscious, like releasing a small burden. The parties, the galas, the endless networking events, he continued, almost to himself. Everyone wants something. Everyone has an agenda. My family? He trailed off, then turned back to face her. My parents have very specific ideas about how a Anderson should behave, who they should associate with, what causes they should support. That sounds... Claire searched for the right word. Suffocating. Exactly. Jake's eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw past the billionaire facade to someone who understood what it meant to feel trapped by circumstances. Do you know what I did last weekend? Claire shook her head. I attended 3 charity functions, each one more superficial than the last. Hundreds of people in expensive clothes, pretending to care about causes while really just trying to get their picture in the society pages. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its careful styling. Meanwhile, the actual work, the real change that needs to happen, it gets lost in all the spectacle. Claire found herself nodding. I've seen that from the other side. Sometimes organizations would offer to help, but they were more interested in the PR opportunity than making a real difference. That's it exactly. Jake returned to his seat, leaning forward with renewed energy. Everyone's so concerned with appearances, with maintaining the right image. My mother nearly had a heart attack when I suggested focusing our family foundation on helping women transition out of sex work. Claire's eyebrows rose. You did? It's been my pet project for the past year, Jake admitted. Very quietly. Of course. Can't have the Anderson name associated with anything controversial. The last words carried a sharp edge of sarcasm. That must be frustrating, Claire said softly, beginning to understand the complex person behind the polished exterior. Having the means to help, but being constrained by expectations. You have no idea. Jake smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sometimes I think about walking away from all of it. The family name, the obligations, the endless parade of people who only see the bank account. The vulnerability in his admission caught Claire off guard. This wasn't the superficial small talk she'd expected from a job interview. This was something real, something raw. "That kind of honesty, it's rare in your position," she observed. "So is finding someone who understands what it's like to live under constant judgment," Jake replied, "even if for very different reasons." Jake drummed his fingers on the desk, an uncharacteristic show of nervousness from someone who normally exuded confidence. The afternoon sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across his modern office. "There's something I want to show you," he said finally, reaching for his tablet. "Something that very few people know about." His fingers moved quickly across the screen, pulling up documents and spreadsheets. Claire shifted in her chair, curious about what could make a billionaire CEO appear almost uncertain. The interview had already surprised her in so many ways: his lack of judgment, his candid confessions about his family pressures. What else could there be? "For the past year," Jake began, turning the tablet toward her, "I've been privately funding a foundation." He paused, watching her reaction carefully. "It's called New Horizons, and it specifically helps women transition out of the adult film industry." Claire's breath caught in her throat. She leaned forward, scanning the documents on the screen. Budget allocations for job training programs, housing assistance, educational grants. Everything she had once dreamed of implementing herself. "This is..." She trailed off, overwhelmed by the scope of the project. "We've helped 37 women so far," Jake continued, his voice growing more confident as he spoke about the foundation. "Complete career transitions, new identities when needed, therapy, medical care, whatever it takes to give them a fresh start." Claire's hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through the documents. Each line item represented a lifeline she wished she'd had during her own transition. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why would you risk your reputation on something like this?" Jake stood up and walked to the window, his reflection overlaying the city skyline. 5 years ago I met someone, a woman who worked in the industry. She was brilliant, had a degree in biochemistry, but one mistake in college, one video, destroyed her chances at a conventional career." He turned back to face Claire. "She died of an overdose before I could help her." The weight of his words hung in the air between them. Claire could see the genuine pain in his eyes, understanding now why he'd been so different from every other executive she'd met. "My family doesn't know," he continued, returning to his seat. "They'd be horrified, not at the helping part, but at the association with anything they consider unseemly." His lip curled slightly at the word. "The foundation operates through a series of shell companies and trusts. As far as the Anderson family is concerned, I'm simply making standard philanthropic investments." "That must be difficult," Claire said, thinking of the double life he was leading. "Hiding something you're clearly passionate about." Jake's laugh was hollow. "Easier than fighting them. You've never met my mother, but trust me, she can make the social pages of every newspaper in the city turn against someone with one phone call. The foundation's work is too important to risk that kind of exposure." Claire nodded, understanding all too well how quickly public opinion could turn. She looked down at the tablet again, at the lives being changed in secret. "These women, they have no idea it's you behind this?" "No," Jake said simply. "They work with our counselors and case managers. As far as they know, it's just another non-profit." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "But that's not what matters. What matters is that they get the help they need, the second chance they deserve." Claire felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. All her life, she'd faced judgment, scorn, or false sympathy from people in positions of power. But here was someone who not only understood, but was actively working to help women like her, and doing it without seeking credit or praise. "I've never..." she started, then had to take a moment to compose herself. I've never met anyone who actually understood, who saw us as people worth helping, not just charity cases or cautionary tales. Jake's eyes softened with compassion. Everyone deserves a chance to rewrite their story, Claire. Everyone deserves to be seen for who they are, not just their past choices. Jake straightened in his chair, his demeanor shifting from vulnerable confession to something more purposeful. The tablet still displayed the Foundation's documents between them, a bridge connecting their worlds. "Claire," he said, his voice taking on a tone she hadn't heard before, measured, careful. "I didn't just show you this foundation on a whim. I've been looking for someone to manage a new initiative we're launching." Claire's heartbeat quickened. The interview suddenly felt different, weightier somehow. She clasped her hands in her lap to keep them from fidgeting. "What kind of initiative?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jake stood up and walked around his desk, perching on its edge closer to her. "We want to expand our reach, create a comprehensive transition program, not just financial support, but a complete system of mentorship, job placement, and ongoing advocacy." He paused, studying her reaction. The position would involve overseeing the entire program, full autonomy, substantial resources, and direct access to me whenever needed. Claire's mind raced with possibilities. Everything she'd dreamed of implementing, everything she wished she'd had during her own transition. It could become reality. But something in Jake's expression told her there was more. "There's a catch, isn't there?" she asked softly. Jake nodded, running a hand through his hair. "The role requires visibility, public speaking, media appearances, networking with potential corporate partners. We need someone who can be the face of this initiative, someone who understands firsthand what these women are going through." The excitement in Claire's chest turned to ice. Public visibility meant exposure. Exposure meant scrutiny. Her past, which she'd worked so hard to keep private, would become headline material. "You want me to go public with my history," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Jake admitted, "but not as a victim or a cautionary tale. As a success story, a leader, someone who's rebuilt their life and is now helping others do the same." Claire stood up abruptly, needing to move. She walked to the window, staring out at the city below. Her reflection stared back at her. Professional outfit, carefully styled hair, the image of success she'd crafted so carefully. "Do you know what that would mean?" she asked, still facing the window. "The tabloids, the judgment, the way people would look at me, at my family." She turned back to face him. "Everything I've built could come crashing down." Jake remained where he was, giving her space. "I know I'm asking a lot, but think about what we could accomplish. Your story could inspire others, show them there's a way out. The women we help, they need someone who truly understands their journey." Claire's mind flashed to memories of her own transition. The night spent crying over rejected job applications, the sideways glances when people recognized her, the constant fear of exposure. But she also remembered the handful of people who'd helped her, who'd seen past her history to who she could become. "The salary would be substantial," Jake continued, "and you'd have full security protection. We'd handle any negative press, provide media training, everything you'd need to succeed." Claire returned to her seat, her legs feeling unsteady. The opportunity before her was everything she'd wanted, a chance to make real change, to help others avoid the struggles she'd faced. But the price was terrifying. She started, then stopped, overwhelmed by the competing emotions surging through her. Fear warred with excitement, anxiety with ambition. The thought of stepping into the spotlight made her stomach churn. But the possibility of helping others, of truly making a difference. Jake watched her internal struggle with understanding eyes. "You don't have to decide right now," he said gently. "Take some time to think about it. Talk it over with your family if you need to." Claire nodded, grateful for the reprieve, but already feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a chance to redefine her narrative, to transform her past from a source of shame into a tool for change. But was she ready to face the world's judgment head-on? Jake leaned forward in his chair, his expression earnest. Let me paint the full picture of what this role would mean. He pulled out a sleek tablet and began pulling up documents. The position comes with a corner office on the 35th floor, full benefits, and a starting salary of $200,000 annually. Claire's eyes widened, but Jake wasn't finished. You'd have a team of 5 directly reporting to you, plus access to our PR department, legal counsel, and human resources specialists. The numbers and details swirled in Claire's mind as Jake continued. The foundation currently helps about 50 women per year. With this expansion, we're looking to multiply that tenfold within 18 months. That's ambitious, Claire managed, her throat dry. It is, Jake agreed. But here's where things get complicated. He set the tablet down and met her eyes directly. To achieve this, we need to go public in a big way. Corporate partnerships, media campaigns, speaking engagements. And for that to work, we need a face for the program. Someone authentic, someone who's lived this journey. Claire's stomach tightened. You mean me? Yes. Your story would be crucial. Every interview, every partnership meeting, every fundraising event. They'll want to know about your background. The questions will be personal, sometimes uncomfortable. Jake's voice softened. I won't sugarcoat it. There will be criticism. Some people won't understand or accept what we're trying to do. Claire stood up, needing to move. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she paced. My past would be everywhere, she said, more to herself than to Jake. News articles, social media, probably some awful tabloid headlines. We'd have a full PR team to help manage the narrative, Jake assured her. Media training, prepared statements, carefully vetted interviews only. But yes, your history would become public knowledge. Claire stopped at the window, watching the city bustle below. All those people going about their lives, unaware of her past. If she took this job, that would change. Her carefully constructed walls would come down. My family, she whispered. They've only just started to move past everything. This would drag it all back up. Jake stood and walked over, keeping a respectful distance. I understand your hesitation. Believe me, I do. My own family. He paused, collecting his thoughts. They don't know about the foundation. When they find out, there will be consequences. But sometimes doing the right thing means facing difficult truths. Claire turned to face him. How many women did you say the foundation helps? Currently 50 per year. With you leading the expansion, we could help 500. 500 women looking for a second chance, just like you had. The weight of those numbers settled over Claire. 500 lives that could be changed. 500 women who wouldn't have to struggle alone like she did. But the cost. She sank back into her chair, feeling suddenly exhausted. Memories flooded her mind. The shame of being recognized at a grocery store, the whispers behind her back at her last job, the tears she'd shed trying to build a new life. She'd worked so hard to put that all behind her. She took a shaky breath. I need time to think about this. Jake nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. He slid a business card across the desk. My personal number is on the back. Call me anytime if you have questions. Claire picked up the card, staring at it as if it might hold answers. But her mind was already spinning with possibilities and fears. The chance to make a real difference weighted against the terror of public exposure. The opportunity of a lifetime versus the comfort of anonymity. She sat there, lost in thought, the business card trembling slightly in her hand as she contemplated a future she'd never imagined for herself. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city streets as Claire walked, her interview heels clicking against the pavement. She'd been walking for nearly an hour, letting the urban rhythm of honking cars and chattering pedestrians wash over her as her mind churned. $200,000. The number kept repeating in her head. It was more money than she'd ever made in her life, even during her most successful days in the adult industry. But this time, the money would come with respect, purpose, and a chance to help others. She paused at a small park, sinking onto a bench. A young mother pushed a stroller past, giving Claire a friendly nod. Would she still smile if she knew my past? Claire wondered. Would anyone? Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister Sarah. How did the interview go? Claire stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Sarah had stood by her through everything, even when their parents hadn't. She'd helped Claire piece her life back together, encouraged her to go back to school, celebrated every small victory. What would Sarah say about this opportunity? 500 women, Claire whispered to herself, watching pigeons peck at crumbs nearby. That number felt enormous. 500 stories like hers, 500 chances for redemption. She thought about her own journey, how lonely and overwhelming it had been at first. The judgmental looks, the slammed doors, the whispered comments. Standing up, Claire continued walking, this time toward the waterfront. The breeze carried the salt smell of the harbor, reminding her of childhood trips to the beach. Before everything got complicated, before the choices that had shaped her life. A group of businesswomen passed by, their confident strides and power suits representing everything Claire had once thought was forever out of her reach. Now Jake was offering her that same world, an executive position, a corner office, respect. But it came with a price. Complete transparency about her past. Claire found another bench overlooking the water. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, reflecting off the glass buildings behind her. She pulled out Jake's business card, turning it over in her hands. Her mind drifted to the women she'd known in the industry. Talented, intelligent women who felt trapped, who couldn't see a way out. Women who had dreams but lacked opportunities. Women who needed someone to believe in them, just as Jake now believed in her. Maybe that's why this happened, she murmured, watching boats bob in the harbor. Maybe all of it, even the painful parts, led me here. The thought settled over her like a warm blanket. For years, she'd tried to run from her past, to bury it so deep it could never surface. But what if, instead of hiding, she could transform it into something meaningful? What if her story could become a beacon of hope for others? Claire pulled out her phone again, this time opening her notes app. She began listing pros and cons, something Sarah had taught her to do when facing big decisions. Pros: help hundreds of women financial security prestigious position. Make a real difference, transform past into purpose. Cons: public exposure, family stress, media scrutiny, potential rejection, reopening old wounds. Looking at the lists, Claire realized something. Every con was rooted in fear, while every pro pointed toward growth and purpose. She thought about Jake's words about facing difficult truths and doing the right thing. Taking a deep breath, Claire pulled out her phone one more time. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed Jake's number. Hello, Jake. It's Claire. I've made my decision. I want to accept the position. Claire stood in front of the mirrored walls of the elevator, smoothing her navy blazer for the 10th time. The outfit had cost more than her previous month's rent, but Sarah had insisted it was an investment in her future. You're an executive now, her sister had said, while helping her shop. You need to look the part. The elevator climbed higher, numbers flashing. 34, 35. 36. Each ding made her heart beat faster. Her reflection showed a woman she barely recognized, polished, professional, put together. But underneath the expensive clothes, her stomach was doing somersaults. When the doors opened to the 42nd floor, Claire stepped into a world of gleaming glass and brushed steel. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in warm gold. The reception area buzzed with energy as employees hurried past, carrying tablets and takeaway coffee cups. "Mrs. Thompson?" A young receptionist smiled warmly. "Mr. Harrison is expecting you. Right this way." Claire followed her through the open office space, aware of curious glances from other employees. She wondered how many of them knew about her past, how many would judge her once they found out. The thought made her grip her leather portfolio tighter. Jake's office door was open, and he was standing by his desk, phone to his ear. When he saw Claire, his face lit up with a genuine smile. He held up one finger in a just a moment gesture and wrapped up his call. "Claire, welcome to your first day." Jake crossed the room in long strides, extending his hand. His grip was firm and warm, steadying her slightly shaking hands. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Claire admitted, managing a small laugh. "But ready." "That's exactly how you should feel." Jake guided her to a comfortable seating area by the windows, where a coffee service was already set up. "Coffee? I remember you mentioned you like it with just cream." The fact that he'd remembered such a small detail from their interview caught Claire off guard. "Yes, thank you." As Jake prepared their coffees, Claire took in the view of the city sprawling below. From up here, everything looked possible. The morning sun glinted off distant buildings, and tiny cars moved like toys along the streets where she'd walked just days ago, wrestling with her decision. "I had the team prepare this for you." Jake handed her a coffee and settled into the chair across from her, placing a sleek tablet on the table between them. "It's our current framework for the transition program. I'd love your input on making it more effective." Claire set down her portfolio and picked up the tablet, scrolling through the detailed plans. The program was more comprehensive than she'd imagined. Housing assistance, education grants, career counseling, mental health support. Everything she'd wished for when she'd first tried to leave the industry. "This is incredible," she said, looking up at Jake. "But also overwhelming. There's so much to consider." "That's why we need you." Jake leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You understand what these women are going through in a way none of us can. Your experience isn't a liability here, Claire. It's your greatest asset." Something loosened in Claire's chest at his words. She'd spent so long seeing her past as something to hide, something to overcome. But here, in this sunlit office, that same past was being treated as valuable knowledge. "I've been thinking about adding a mentorship component," she said, surprising herself with her confidence. "Having someone who's been through it, who can show them it's possible to build a new life, that could make a real difference." Jake's eyes lit up. "That's exactly the kind of insight we need. Tell me more." As they dove into discussion, Claire felt her nervousness transforming into excitement. Ideas flowed freely between them, each building on the other's suggestions. The project began to take shape in a way that felt real, tangible, possible. Though her hands still trembled slightly when she reached for her coffee, and her heart still skipped whenever she thought about the public aspects of her role, Claire felt something else too, a sense of rightness, of purpose. For the first time in years, her past wasn't a weight dragging her down. It was a bridge, leading others toward hope. Claire stood in front of the converted warehouse that now housed the charity's headquarters. The brick building had been transformed with modern touches, large windows, a welcoming entrance, and a small garden that softened the industrial exterior. A discreet sign read, "New Horizons Foundation." Her heels clicked against the polished concrete floors as she followed Jake through the space. The interior was warm and inviting, with comfortable seating areas, private meeting rooms, and a large communal space filled with natural light. "We wanted it to feel safe, but not clinical," Jake explained, gesturing to the carefully chosen artwork and soft furnishings. "Somewhere between a professional office and a comfortable living room." They entered a conference room where 5 women sat around a large table. Claire's throat tightened. She recognized one of them from her past. Sarah Chen gave her a small wave, and Claire felt a rush of relief at the familiar face. "Ladies," Jake began, "this is Claire Thompson. She'll be managing our transition program." He turned to Claire. "These are our first participants: Sarah, Monica, Jessica, Tanya, and Rachel." Claire took a deep breath and smiled. "I know how hard it is to take this step. I've been exactly where you are." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "This isn't about erasing your past. It's about building your future." The tension in the room eased slightly. Monica, a woman with bright red hair, leaned forward. "How did you do it? Make the switch, I mean." "One day at a time," Claire answered honestly. "It wasn't easy. There were setbacks. But having support makes all the difference." She caught Sarah's eye. "That's what we're building here." For the next hour, Claire led a discussion about their needs and concerns. The women gradually opened up, sharing their stories and hopes. Jake observed from the corner, taking notes but letting Claire guide the conversation. "Education is great," Tanya said, "but what about the judgment? The whispers? The looks when people find out?" Claire was about to respond when Jake's assistant appeared at the door, looking worried. "Mr. Harrison, there's something you need to see." Jake excused himself, returning moments later with his tablet. He motioned for Claire to join him in the hallway. Her stomach dropped when she saw the headline on the screen. "Adult film star takes lead role at Billionaire's charity. Legitimate program or PR stunt?" The article included a photo of Claire entering the building that morning. Her hands began to shake as she scrolled through the comment section, filled with cruel speculation and judgment. "I'm so sorry," Jake said softly. "We thought we'd have more time before the press caught wind of this." Claire handed the tablet back, her mind racing. The women in that room needed her to be strong, to show them it was possible to face the public's judgment and survive. "What do you want to do?" Jake asked. "We can delay the public launch, keep things quiet for a while longer." Through the conference room windows, Claire could see the women talking animatedly, hope visible on their faces. She thought about all the others out there who needed to know that change was possible. "No," she said firmly. "We knew this would happen eventually. Better to face it head on." She straightened her shoulders. "Those women in there, they need to see that we won't hide, that we're not ashamed." Jake studied her face. "Are you sure? Once we acknowledge this publicly, there's no going back." Claire nodded, even as her heart raced. "I'm sure, but I need to tell them first. They deserve to hear it from me." She walked back into the conference room, where the women fell silent, sensing something had changed. Claire took her place at the head of the table, feeling the weight of their eyes on her. "There's something we need to discuss," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "The press has found out about our program, and about my past." Claire sat in her new office, staring at her computer screen as headline after headline scrolled past. Each one felt like a punch to the gut. Scandal. Ex-adult star leads charity initiative. Billionaire's questionable choice raises eyebrows. From adult films to executive suite, a PR disaster? Her hands trembled as she clicked through the articles. The words blurred together. Questionable past, moral concerns, inappropriate choice. One particularly vicious blog post had dug up old promotional photos from her previous life, plastering them next to her recent professional headshots. The office phone rang for the third time that morning. Claire let it go to voicemail, knowing it was probably another reporter fishing for a quote. Her personal phone buzzed constantly with messages from unknown numbers. Sarah, one of the program participants, knocked softly on her door. "Claire? Are you okay? We've all seen the news." Claire quickly wiped her eyes. "Come in, Sarah." She tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. "I'm sorry you all have to deal with this." "Deal with what? The fact that someone's actually trying to help us?" Sarah sat down across from Claire's desk. "We knew what we were signing up for. The media's always going to judge us. That's why we're here, isn't it? To prove them wrong?" Before Claire could respond, her assistant poked her head in. "Ms. Thompson, Channel 5 is downstairs. They're trying to interview the women as they leave the building." Claire's chest tightened. This was exactly what she'd feared. The media circus affecting not just her, but everyone involved in the program. She stood up, straightening her blazer. "Tell security not to let them in, and make sure everyone has a safe way out through the back entrance." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Jake. "Turn on Channel 8, his text read. Claire grabbed the remote with shaking hands and switched on the office TV. A panel of experts was discussing the charity's leadership choice. "It's inappropriate at best, predatory at worst," a stern-looking woman was saying. "How can someone with her background be trusted with vulnerable women? This is clearly a publicity stunt by Harrison Technologies." "She's exactly what these women need," another panelist argued. "Someone who understands their struggles. Someone who perpetuated the very industry they're trying to escape from," the first woman interrupted. Claire muted the TV, feeling sick. Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. "They don't know you," she said firmly. The door opened again, and Jake strode in, looking concerned. "I came as soon as I saw the coverage." He nodded to Sarah, who quietly excused herself. "I'm fine," Claire said automatically, but her voice cracked. "No, you're not." Jake closed the door and sat down. "And you don't have to be. This is brutal, even by media standards." Claire gestured helplessly at her computer screen. "They're right, aren't they? What was I thinking? I'm just hurting the program's credibility. These women deserve better than—" "Stop." Jake's voice was gentle but firm. "You're exactly what these women need. You're living proof that there's life after the industry. That's why I chose you." "But your reputation—" "I don't care about my reputation." Jake leaned forward. "Claire, look at me. When was the last time you saw Sarah speak up for anyone? She's been in therapy for months, barely saying a word. Today she came in here to support you. That's the difference you're making." Claire took a shaky breath. I thought I was ready for this. But seeing my past splashed across every news site, hearing them question everything about me." Jake stood up and walked around the desk. "You are ready, and you're not alone." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Let them talk. While they're busy judging, you'll be here actually making a difference." The warmth of his touch and the conviction in his voice steadied her. Claire looked at the muted TV, where they were still debating her worth, then at her computer screen full of negative headlines. Finally, she looked at the photos on her wall, the women in the program, their faces full of hope. "You're right," she said, her voice stronger. "They can say what they want. We have work to do." The office was eerily quiet at 10 p.m. Most of the lights were off, except for the soft glow coming from Claire's office. She sat at her desk, staring at the pile of negative press clippings she'd collected throughout the day. The harsh words seemed to blur together in the dim light. A gentle knock startled her. Jake stood in the doorway, his tie loosened and jacket draped over his arm. "I thought I might find you here," he said, stepping inside. "Have you eaten anything?" Claire shook her head, managing a weak smile. "Lost my appetite somewhere between morally bankrupt and unfit for leadership." Jake pulled up a chair and sat beside her desk rather than across from it, a small gesture that made the conversation feel less formal. "You know, my mother once told me I was unfit to run the company because I wanted to invest in renewable energy instead of oil." He loosened his tie further. "Said I'd destroy generations of family wealth with my bleeding heart idealism." "That must have been hard," Claire said softly, turning away from the computer screen. "Is that why you kept the charity secret?" "Partly." Jake leaned back, his shoulders heavy with invisible weight. "Everything in my world comes with strings attached. Family name, family money, family expectations. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating in a golden cage." Claire studied his face, seeing beyond the polished exterior to the trapped man beneath. "At least your cage is golden," she said with a hint of bitterness. "Mine was different." She paused, gathering courage. "I was 19 when I started. Young, desperate, thinking it would just be temporary. One video to pay for college turned into 2, then 3. Before I knew it, years had passed." Jake listened quietly, his expression free of judgment. "The worst part?" Claire continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I convinced other girls it was okay. Told them it was empowering, that we were in control. But we weren't. Not really." She blinked back tears. "Some of those girls are still there, Jake. Still trapped. And I helped put them there. But now you're helping them get out," Jake reminded her gently. "If they'll trust me, after everything—" Claire gestured at the press clippings. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not the right person for this." Jake shifted forward in his chair. "You know what my father told me when I started the tech company. That I was betraying our oil empire. That I was spitting on my grandfather's grave." He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling its perfect arrangement. Every dinner, every family event became a battlefield. "When are you going to grow up, Jake? When will you take your proper place? What did you do? Built the company anyway. Proved them wrong." He smiled sadly. "They still don't approve. But now they can't deny my success. They just find new ways to pressure me. The right marriage, the right social circles, the right public image." Claire felt a sudden understanding. "Is that why you help people like me? People who don't fit the right image?" "Maybe." Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Or maybe I just know what it's like to feel trapped by other people's expectations, to want something more, but be afraid to reach for it." Claire joined him at the window. Their reflections overlapped in the glass, the polished businessman and the woman fighting for redemption. "We're quite a pair, aren't we?" she said softly. "Both trying to break free from our pasts." "The difference is, you're braver than I am," Jake said, turning to face her. "You're facing your past head on, using it to help others. I'm still hiding parts of myself to keep the peace." Their eyes met in the dim light, and Claire saw something shift in Jake's expression, a vulnerability she'd never noticed before. The space between them felt charged with understanding, with shared pain and hope. "Maybe," Claire said quietly, "we can help each other be brave." They stood there in comfortable silence, the city twinkling below them, each feeling less alone than they had moments before. The weight of their secrets felt lighter somehow, shared between them in the quiet of the empty office. Claire's hands trembled as she smoothed down her navy blazer for the 100th time. The conference room mirror reflected a professional woman she barely recognized. Hair neatly styled, makeup subtle but polished, outfit carefully chosen to project authority and credibility. But inside, her stomach churned with anxiety. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection, trying to believe it. The note cards in her pocket felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds, each one containing carefully crafted talking points about the charity's mission. She'd practiced the speech until the words were burned into her memory, but now they seemed to scatter like leaves in the wind. A gentle knock at the door made her jump. "5 minutes," Jake's assistant called out. Claire closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Through the walls, she could hear the growing murmur of voices in the main hall. Journalists, potential donors, and curious onlookers, all waiting to see the former adult film actress who dared to step into the spotlight for a different reason. The door opened quietly, and Jake slipped in. "How are you holding up?" "Terrified," Claire admitted, turning to face him. "I keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. What if someone brings up specific films? What if they ask about—" She trailed off, unable to voice her deepest fears. Jake stepped closer, adjusting his tie in the mirror beside her. "Then you'll handle it with the same grace and strength you've shown every day since I met you." He paused, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "You know, when I first told you about this charity, I never imagined finding someone who could embody its mission so perfectly." Claire snorted softly. "A former porn star? I'm sure that's exactly what your family had in mind." "No," Jake said firmly. "A survivor, a fighter, someone who understands both sides of this industry and chose to make a difference." He turned to face her directly. "That's what they'll see out there today, if you let them." Claire fiddled with her sleeve, remembering the countless times she'd prepared for cameras before. But this was different. This time she wasn't hiding behind a stage name or heavy makeup. This was real, raw, terrifying. "I've been thinking about Sarah," she said quietly, referring to one of the first women who'd joined their program. "She was so scared when she came to us, convinced she'd never be anything more than her past. Now she's starting community college next month." Jake smiled. "That's what you should talk about out there. Not the statistics or the funding goals, though those matter too. Talk about Sarah. Talk about hope." Another knock at the door. 2 minutes. Claire took another deep breath, straightening her shoulders. She could hear chairs scraping, cameras being set up, the buzz of conversation growing louder. "Will you—" She hesitated. "Will you stand where I can see you?" "Front row, right side," Jake promised. "Just look for the guy who believes in you more than anyone else in that room." Warmth bloomed in Claire's chest, cutting through some of the anxiety. She nodded, gathered her notes, and walked towards the door. The corridor seemed longer than usual, each step bringing her closer to the moment of truth. At the entrance to the main hall, she paused. Through the gap in the curtain, she could see the crowd settling into their seats. Journalists with their notebooks ready, cameras pointed at the podium, whispers already starting as people recognized her from the press coverage. But then she saw Jake taking his promised place in the front row. He gave her a subtle nod, and suddenly she remembered why she was doing this. Not for herself, not for Jake, but for Sarah and all the others like her. Women who needed to know there was a way out, that their past didn't have to define their future. Claire squared her shoulders and gripped her notes tighter. The host began introducing her, and she heard her own name echo through the speakers. With one final deep breath, she stepped out from behind the curtain and walked toward the podium, ready to face whatever came next. The lights were bright, the cameras flashing, but Claire kept her eyes focused ahead. She could feel the weight of every stare, hear the rustle of recognition through the crowd. But as she reached the podium and looked out at the sea of faces, she found Jake's supportive gaze and began to speak. Claire's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She sat in her office, staring at the endless stream of notifications flooding her screen. The article had gone viral overnight. A sensationalized exposé detailing her past work in explicit detail, complete with screenshots and quotes from former co-stars. Former adult film star attempts career makeover. Can a leopard change its spots? Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments. Each one felt like a knife to her chest. Once a porn star, always a porn star. Who does she think she's fooling? This is who's supposed to help other women? What a joke! The charity's phone lines were ringing non-stop. 3 corporate sponsors had already pulled their support, citing image concerns. Their carefully built momentum was crumbling. Claire pushed away from her desk, pacing the length of her office. The floor-to-ceiling windows that usually offered a sense of openness now made her feel exposed. She drew the blinds, needing a moment of darkness. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Claire, Channel 7 is requesting a statement, and, there are protesters gathering outside the building. Of course there were protesters. Claire walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. Sure enough, a small crowd was forming, some holding signs with phrases she couldn't bring herself to read. The door opened, and Jake rushed in, his tie loosened and hair disheveled. Claire, I just saw the article. Are you okay? She tried to laugh, but it came out more like a sob. Okay? I'm watching everything we've built fall apart. They're dragging up every film, every scene. She wrapped her arms around herself. God, they even found my real name, Jake. My family, my little sister. Jake crossed the room, his face tight with concern. We knew this might happen. We prepared for this. Did we? Claire's voice cracked. Because I don't feel prepared. I feel like an idiot for thinking I could do this, for thinking people would see past. She gestured helplessly at the computer screen still displaying the article. Look at me, Jake said firmly, placing his hands on her shoulders. This is exactly what they want, to shame you back into silence, to prove that someone with your past doesn't deserve a second chance. Claire pulled away, moving to the window again. The crowd had grown larger. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just kidding myself. These women deserve someone better to lead them, someone without my baggage. These women deserve someone who understands their struggle firsthand, Jake countered. Someone who's walked in their shoes and found a way forward. That's you, Claire. She turned to face him, tears threatening to spill. How can you still believe in me? Your family must be having a field day with this. Your reputation. To hell with my reputation, Jake interrupted, surprising her with his vehemence. And to hell with my family's opinions. I've spent my whole life trying to live up to their expectations, and you know what? Supporting this cause, supporting you, it's the first thing that's felt truly right. A tear escaped, rolling down Claire's cheek. I'm scared, Jake. I thought I was strong enough for this, but seeing it all dragged out again. Jake stepped forward, gently wiping away her tear with his thumb. You are strong enough. This isn't the end, Claire. It's just a storm we have to weather. The sponsors. We'll find new ones, better ones who actually believe in second chances. Outside, they could hear the protesters' chants growing louder. Claire closed her eyes, feeling the weight of judgment pressing in from all sides. But Jake's presence beside her was steady, unwavering. I don't know if I can face them, she whispered. Then don't. Not today. Today we regroup. We remember why we started this. Jake's voice was soft but determined. Tomorrow we fight back. Not with anger or shame, but with truth. Your truth. Claire sat at her desk late into the night, the city lights twinkling beyond her office windows. The protesters had finally gone home, but their words still echoed in her mind. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. After a week of relentless attacks, she'd realized something. Letting others control her story was what gave them power. She began to type. To those who think they know me, I was 19 when I entered the adult film industry. Not because I wanted to, but because I had aged out of the foster system and couldn't afford college. I was hungry, scared, and desperate. This isn't an excuse, it's simply the truth. She paused, taking a deep breath. The words were coming easier now, flowing from a place deep inside she'd kept locked away for years. For 5 years, I convinced myself it was just temporary. One more film, one more scene, then I'd have enough to start over. But starting over isn't as simple as walking away. The shame follows you. The judgment becomes a shadow you can't shake. Her phone buzzed, another news alert about her past. She ignored it, continuing to write. You've seen the headlines. You've read the articles exposing every detail of my former life. You think you know me because you've seen what I did. But you don't know about the nights I cried myself to sleep, or the mornings I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. You don't know about the dreams I had to give up, or the family members who stopped speaking to me. Claire wiped away a tear, remembering her sister's face when she'd discovered the truth. The memory strengthened her resolve. But this letter isn't about gaining your sympathy. It's about telling my truth. Yes, I worked in adult films. Yes, I made choices I regret. But those choices don't define who I am today or what I'm capable of becoming. She thought about the women who'd reached out to the charity, their stories so similar to her own. Their voices gave her courage. Every day, I meet women who want to escape the adult industry but don't know how. Women who believe they're trapped because society has convinced them they're worthless beyond their bodies. I was one of those women. Sometimes I still am. But I'm also proof that change is possible. The office was quiet, except for the soft tapping of keys. Outside, the city hummed with late-night energy. To those who say I'm trying to hide my past, you're wrong. I'm acknowledging it. I'm learning from it. And most importantly, I'm using it to help others find their way out. This isn't about erasing who I was. It's about choosing who I want to become. Claire paused, considering her next words carefully. She thought about Jake's unwavering support, about the women in their program who'd trusted her with their stories. You can keep trying to shame me. You can protest outside our offices. You can dig up every film I ever made, but you can't stop me from fighting for these women, because every time you try to tear me down, you remind me exactly why this work is so important. Her fingers flew across the keyboard now, powered by years of pent-up emotions. To every woman who's felt trapped, who's believed she had no other choice, I see you. I was you. And I'm here to tell you that you're worth more than your past. You deserve a second chance. We all do. She ended the letter simply. With hope and determination. Claire Matthews. After reading it through one final time, she sent it to Jake for review. Within minutes, her phone rang. This is powerful, Claire, Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. Are you sure you want to do this? Claire looked at the framed photo on her desk, a group shot of their first successful program graduates. I'm sure. It's time to stop hiding. The next morning, the letter was published in major newspapers and across social media platforms. Within hours, it went viral, but not for the reasons she'd feared. Messages of support flooded in. Women shared their own stories of transformation. Former critics admitted to changing their perspectives. For the first time in weeks, Claire felt like she could breathe again. The weight hadn't completely lifted. She knew there would always be those who judged her. But she'd found her voice, and it was stronger than she'd imagined. Claire sat at her desk, scrolling through her morning emails when her phone started buzzing incessantly. Text messages flooded in from colleagues and friends. Her stomach dropped as she opened the first link they'd sent. Senator Margaret Walsh, known for her conservative stance and massive social media following, had posted a scathing video about the charity. Claire's hands trembled as she pressed play. This organization, led by a former adult film performer, claims to help women. The senator's voice dripped with disdain. But let's be honest, they're exploiting these vulnerable women for publicity and profit. How can someone who made money from the adult industry claim to now be their savior? Claire's throat tightened. The senator continued her attack, questioning the charity's financial transparency and suggesting they were merely providing Band-Aid solutions while profiting from women's stories. It's disgraceful, Walsh concluded, that a respected businessman like Jake Morrison would associate himself with such an enterprise. The office phone started ringing. Claire let it go to voicemail, her eyes fixed on the view count climbing rapidly on the video. 300,000 views. 400,000. The comments section filled with vitriol. Sarah, her assistant, knocked on the door. "Claire, Channel 7 is outside. They're requesting a statement." "Tell them no comment," Claire managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She'd faced criticism before, but this was different. Senator Walsh had millions of followers, real political influence, and a reputation for destroying her targets. Her phone buzzed again, this time with messages from program participants. "Is the charity closing? Should we be worried? Are the accusations true?" Claire's carefully constructed confidence began to crumble. She thought of all the women who trusted her, who had taken the brave step to seek help. Now, because of her past, their sanctuary was under attack. The door opened, and Jake rushed in, his tie askew and concern etched on his face. "I just saw the video." "It's bad, Jake." Claire's voice cracked. "Really bad. The senator's calling for an investigation into our finances. She's saying we're exploiting women for profit, that I'm—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Jake pulled up a chair beside her desk. "Listen to me. Senator Walsh is known for these publicity stunts. She's trying to boost her ratings before the midterm elections." "But she's right about one thing," Claire said, wiping away a tear. "Who am I to think I could help these women? Maybe I'm just making things worse. My past will always be used against them, against the charity." "That's exactly what people like Walsh want you to think," Jake said firmly. "They want you to doubt yourself, to give up. But think about Maria, who just got her real estate license, or Jennifer, who's starting college next month. They succeeded because of you, because you understood their struggles firsthand." Claire glanced at the wall of photos, dozens of women who'd completed their program, their faces bright with hope and new possibilities. But would those possibilities survive this attack? "The board members are calling," she said, showing Jake her phone. "They're worried about the publicity. If they pull their support—" "They won't," Jake interrupted, "because I won't let them. This charity isn't just your mission anymore, Claire. It's mine too." She looked at him, seeing the determination in his eyes. "Your reputation is worth nothing if I can't stand up for what I believe in." He reached across the desk and took her hand. "We knew there would be opposition. We knew some people would never accept that people can change, can grow, can become more than their past mistakes." Claire squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his unwavering support. But the weight of Walsh's accusations still pressed heavy on her chest. "What if we can't survive this? What if—" "We will," Jake said firmly. "Together. We'll face whatever comes next, just like we've faced everything else." Despite his reassurance, Claire felt the familiar cloud of doubt settling over her. She'd worked so hard to prove herself, to help others, to become someone she could be proud of. Now it felt like it was all slipping away, threatened by someone who'd never even met her, but felt entitled to judge her entire worth based on her past. Claire sat at her desk, staring at the pile of letters that had arrived that morning. After Senator Walsh's attack, she'd expected hate mail. Instead, she found something entirely different. "I saw what happened with Senator Walsh," one letter read. "I worked in the industry for 6 years. Your charity gives me hope that there's a way out." Another envelope contained a check for $5,000 with a note. "Keep fighting. Your work matters." Claire's hands trembled as she read letter after letter. Women from across the country had written to share their stories, their struggles, and their dreams of starting over. Each one reminded her why she'd taken this job in the first place. She grabbed her notebook and started making calls, first to Maria, who'd recently completed their program and started her own small business, then to Jennifer, now thriving in college. Their voices strengthened her resolve. "We need to do more," she told Jake later that morning, spreading her notes across his desk. "These women need more than just job training. They need emotional support, legal advice, health care." Jake leaned forward, studying the documents. "What are you proposing?" "A complete support system." Claire's voice grew stronger with each word. "We expand our services to include therapy, legal counsel for those dealing with contract issues, and partnerships with educational institutions." She pulled out another folder. "I've already spoken with 3 universities willing to offer scholarships." "You've been busy," Jake said, impressed. "The senator's attack made me realize something," Claire explained. "We can't just help women leave the industry. We need to address why they entered it in the first place: lack of education, financial pressure, limited opportunities." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "Every woman's story is different, but they all share one thing. They felt they had no other choice. We need to show them they do." Jake joined her at the window. "You're talking about a major expansion." "I know it's ambitious," Claire admitted, "but these letters—" She gestured to her folder. "There are so many women out there who need help. Real help, not just empty promises." She turned to face him. "I want to create a mentorship program. Pair successful graduates with new participants. Show them living proof that change is possible." Jake nodded slowly, a smile spreading across his face. "You're not letting Walsh win." "No," Claire said firmly. "I'm not. In fact, I want to invite her to visit our facilities. Let her meet the women she claims we're exploiting. Show her our financial records, our success stories." "That's bold," Jake remarked. "It's necessary," Claire replied. "We have nothing to hide, and if she still wants to attack us after seeing the real work we do, that's on her conscience, not ours." She returned to her notes. "I've also been talking with other organizations across the country, small groups doing similar work but struggling for funding. We could create a network, share resources, reach more women." As she spoke, Jake watched her with growing admiration. This was a different Claire from the nervous woman who'd first walked into his office. She'd found her purpose, her strength. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "the charity was never meant to be just a side project. I always envisioned it becoming something bigger." Claire looked up from her notes. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Jake continued, "that maybe it's time to expand your role, not just with the charity, but with the company as a whole." He picked up a folder from his desk. "I've been thinking about creating a new position, someone to oversee both our philanthropic initiatives and our corporate social responsibility programs, someone who could be the public face of everything we're trying to achieve." Claire's heart raced as she realized what he was suggesting. "You want me to—" "Take on a bigger role, a more public one," Jake confirmed. "You've proven you can handle the pressure. More importantly, you've shown you have the vision to create real change." Claire adjusted her blazer as she stepped out of the elevator into the lobby. The workday had ended hours ago, but she'd stayed late again, poring over expansion proposals. As she headed for the exit, she noticed a light still on in Jake's office. She knocked softly on his door. You're here late too? Jake looked up from his computer, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. Lost track of time. He gestured at the stack of papers on his desk. Board meeting tomorrow. Have you eaten? The words slipped out before she could stop them. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Actually, no. Want to grab something? 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner booth at Mario's, a small Italian restaurant a few blocks from the office. The formal atmosphere of their workplace melted away as they shared a plate of bruschetta. Remember that first interview? Claire asked, twirling pasta around her fork. I was so sure you'd show me the door the moment I mentioned my past. Jake's eyes softened. I remember thinking how brave you were. Most people would have hidden it, tried to start fresh without addressing it. I'd tried that before, Claire admitted. It never worked. The truth always came out, and then it was worse because I'd lied. She took a sip of wine. Besides, I was tired of being ashamed. You never should have been. Jake's voice was gentle. Your past doesn't define you, Claire. Look at everything you've accomplished in just these few months. The candlelight flickered between them, casting warm shadows across the table. Claire felt herself relaxing, the way she always did around Jake now. Their conversations had grown easier, deeper, moving beyond work to share pieces of themselves they rarely showed others. What about you? She asked. Are you still dealing with pressure from your family? Jake sighed, setting down his fork. My father called yesterday. He's still pushing for me to come to my senses and focus on our core business instead of wasting time on charity cases. His fingers made air quotes around the words. That must be hard, Claire said softly. It used to be harder. Jake met her eyes. Before I met you, I was always second-guessing myself, wondering if maybe they were right. But seeing how many lives were changing, hearing those women's stories, I know this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the wine. You're making a real difference, Jake. Not many billionaires would risk their reputation like this. Speaking of reputations, he smiled, I saw your interview on Morning News today. You were amazing. Claire groaned. I was terrified. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the microphone. Nobody could tell. You spoke with such conviction about the program. Even the host, who usually asks the most cynical questions, seemed moved. Their conversation flowed easily through dinner, touching on everything from childhood dreams to favorite books. Claire couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so comfortable with someone, so free to be herself. As they finished their tiramisu, Jake checked his watch. It's getting late. Let me walk you to your car. The night air was cool as they strolled down the quiet street. Their shoulders brushed occasionally, sending tiny sparks through Claire's body. She found herself walking more slowly, not wanting the evening to end. At her car, Claire turned to thank him for dinner. Jake stepped closer, his expression soft in the streetlight. Gently, he leaned in and pressed a kiss to her cheek. His lips were warm, and Claire felt her breath catch. Good night, Claire, he whispered, stepping back with a smile that made her heart flutter. She touched her cheek where his lips had been, watching as he walked to his own car. Something had shifted between them tonight, something that felt both thrilling and inevitable. Jake stared at his phone as it buzzed for the 5th time that morning. His father's name flashed across the screen again. With a heavy sigh, he finally answered. Father. Jacob, this has gone on long enough. His father's voice was cold steel. The board meeting is in 2 hours, and we need to discuss damage control. Jake pinched the bridge of his nose. There's nothing to control. The charity is doing well, and the charity is becoming a liability, his father cut in. Have you seen the latest headlines? Billionaire's son throws away family legacy for ex-adult film star. Is this really how you want to destroy everything we've built? The words hit like physical blows, but Jake kept his voice steady. Claire is the director of a successful rehabilitation program. Her past doesn't define... Wake up, Jacob. The Richardson deal is hanging by a thread. They're concerned about associating with someone like her. Jake's grip tightened on his phone. Someone like her? You mean someone who's helped dozens of women find new careers? Someone who's shown more courage in facing her past than most people show in their entire lives? Don't be naive. The society we move in— I don't care about society, Jake interrupted. I care about doing what's right. His father's voice dropped dangerously. You have responsibilities to this family, to this company. If you continue this association, there will be consequences. The threat hung in the air between them. Jake stood up from his desk, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Are you threatening to remove me from the board? If necessary. His father paused. There's still time to fix this. Distance yourself from the charity. Let someone else run it. Someone more appropriate. Jake watched a group of women entering the charity's office below. Former adult industry workers now learning new skills, building new lives. Claire stood at the entrance, greeting each one with a warm smile and encouraging words. No, Jake said firmly. I won't abandon these women, and I won't abandon Claire. Then you leave me no choice. His father's voice hardened. The board meeting is in 2 hours. Make your decision by then. The line went dead. Jake lowered his phone, his reflection in the window looking as troubled as he felt. A soft knock at his door made him turn. Jake? Claire stood in the doorway, concern etched on her face. Is everything okay? I heard raised voices. He tried to smile, but it felt strained. My father being... my father. Claire stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. They're really pushing hard, aren't they? They're threatening to remove me from the board if I don't cut ties with the charity. He met her eyes. With you. Claire's face fell. Jake, I never meant to cause problems between you and your family. Maybe if I step back. No. Jake crossed the room to her. Don't even think about it. What we're doing here matters. You matter. But your family has controlled my life for too long. Jake ran a hand through his hair. The board meeting is in 2 hours. They expect me to announce that I'm stepping away from the charity. Claire's eyes widened. What are you going to do? Jake checked his watch, then pressed a button on his desk phone. Sarah, call a press conference, same time as the board meeting, and make sure every major network is there. He turned back to Claire, determination replacing the worry in his eyes. I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. About why I started this charity, about how meeting you changed everything, about how I'm done letting my family dictate my life. Jake, Claire's voice wavered. Are you sure? Once you do this? I've never been more sure of anything. He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. My family may never forgive me, but I'll never forgive myself if I let them stop us from helping people. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. As Jake stood before the gathered press, his father's angry text messages burning in his pocket, he felt strangely calm. The cameras flashed as he stepped up to the microphone, Claire standing supportively to the side. Thank you all for coming, he began. Today, I want to talk about truth, about courage, and about choosing what's right over what's expected. Claire's hands trembled as she set down her coffee mug, staring at the newspaper headlines spread across her desk. The morning light filtering through her office window seemed harsh, highlighting every brutal word attacking her character. Former adult star exploits past for profit. Questionable leadership. Can an ex-porn star really guide others? Charity or publicity stunt? The truth behind the headlines. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. Social media was exploding with opinions, most of them cruel and cutting. She picked up one of the tabloids, her stomach churning as she read the article. Sources close to the charity question whether someone with Claire's background can truly be a role model. It's like having an alcoholic run a rehab center, says industry expert. A knock on her door made her jump. Sarah, her assistant, poked her head in. Claire, I have the morning media report. How bad is it? Claire asked, though she already knew the answer. Sarah's expression was grim as she laid out more papers. 3 major networks picked up the story. They're running segments questioning your qualifications, suggesting you're using the charity for personal gain. Claire pushed back from her desk, walking to the window. Below, she could see reporters camping outside the building, their cameras pointed upward like accusing fingers. They're saying I'm a hypocrite, she said quietly, that I'm exploiting these women's stories for publicity. That's not true, and everyone here knows it, Sarah insisted. The women in our program are defending you on social media. They're sharing their success stories. But the positive voices were being drowned out by the scandal-hungry media. Claire watched as another news van pulled up outside. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Jake. Turn on Channel 4, it read. With shaking hands, Claire grabbed the remote and switched on the office TV. A panel of experts was discussing her leadership of the charity. It's a publicity stunt, plain and simple, one commentator declared. She's using these vulnerable women to rehabilitate her own image. How can someone who made those choices guide others to better lives? What about the success rates? Another panelist argued. The program has helped dozens of women. Despite her leadership, not because of it, the first speaker interrupted. Anyone could run this program. Someone with a more appropriate background would be better suited. Claire muted the TV, feeling sick. These people didn't know her struggles, her determination to help others avoid the pitfalls she'd faced. But their words still cut deep. The office door opened, and Jake strode in, his face tight with concern. I just saw the morning shows. Are you okay? I'm fine, Claire said automatically, then shook her head. No, actually, I'm not fine. They're right. How can I lead this charity when my past keeps haunting us? Maybe someone else should. Stop, Jake interrupted firmly. He crossed the room to stand before her. You're the heart of this organization. These women trust you because you understand their struggles. You've lived it. But the media is doing what they always do, creating controversy for ratings. Jake picked up one of the newspapers, crumpling it. But you know what? We can use their hunger for a story to our advantage. Claire looked at him questioningly. Hold a press conference, Jake suggested. Tell your story, your way. No filters, no interpretations by so-called experts. Just you, speaking your truth. They'll tear me apart, Claire whispered. Let them try. Jake's voice was steel. You've faced worse and survived. These women need you, not some corporate figurehead who's never walked in their shoes, but you. Claire looked at the muted TV, still showing the talking heads arguing about her worth. Then she glanced at the photos on her wall, women graduating from the program, starting new jobs, rebuilding their lives. Her eyes settled on a recent thank you card. You showed me I could be more than my past. Thank you for understanding. Taking a deep breath, Claire straightened her shoulders. You're right. Schedule the press conference. It's time to face them head on. Jake smiled, pride evident in his eyes. I'll have Sarah make the arrangements. We'll do it this afternoon before the evening news cycle. Claire nodded, her fear giving way to determination. The media wanted a story? She'd give them one. But this time, on her own terms. Claire stood behind the podium, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the microphone. The press room was packed, cameras flashing like lightning strikes. Jake stood off to the side, giving her an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, she unfolded her prepared statement, then pushed it aside. Number. She needed to speak from the heart. 7 years ago, she began, her voice wavering before finding its strength. I was a 19-year-old girl with no money, no support system, and no options. Or at least, that's what I thought. The room fell silent, pens poised over notepads. I made choices that seemed like my only path forward at the time. The adult film industry promised quick money and a way out of poverty. What it delivered was a cycle that became harder and harder to break. She paused, taking a sip of water. A reporter in the front row was shaking his head, already forming judgments. Claire met his eyes directly. You're probably wondering why someone like me should be trusted to lead this charity. You're questioning my motivations, my qualifications, my character. I understand those doubts because I had them myself. The words came easier now, flowing from years of buried emotions. But here's what you don't see in those salacious headlines. You don't see the countless nights I've spent counseling women who are where I once was. You don't see the tears of joy when one of our program participants lands her first legitimate job. You don't see the transformation that happens when someone realizes they're worth more than their past mistakes. A camera clicked rapidly in the second row. Claire straightened her shoulders. This charity isn't about me. It's about creating paths forward for women who feel trapped. It's about showing them that one chapter of their life doesn't have to be the whole story. She gestured to a group of women standing along the back wall, graduates of their program. These women are our success stories. They're mothers, business owners, students, professionals. They chose to change their lives, and we gave them the tools to do it. That's what matters, not my past, but what we're building for the future. Sarah appeared at the edge of the stage, signaling that questions would begin soon. Claire held up her hand, not finished yet. To those who say I'm not qualified to lead this organization, you're right. I don't have an MBA. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. What I have is experience. I know the shame these women carry because I carried it too. I know their fears because I lived them. Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. And to the women out there who are where I once was, who feel stuck, who think they don't deserve better, I see you. We see you. There is a way out, and you don't have to walk that path alone. She could feel Jake's proud smile, could sense the shift in the room's energy. Some reporters were nodding now, their pens moving furiously across their pads. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm not here to defend my past or seek redemption in your eyes. I'm here to do the work that needs to be done, to help women reclaim their lives and their dignity. That's my mission, and no amount of criticism will deter me from it. The room erupted with raised hands and shouted questions. Claire could pick out bits and pieces. What about the accusations? How do you respond to critics? Isn't this just a publicity? But mixed with the criticism were different voices. Can you tell us more about your success rates? How many women have completed the program? What support services do you offer? Claire felt a warmth in her chest. Not pride exactly, but something stronger. Purpose. She began answering questions one by one, her voice steady and clear. For the first time since the media storm began, she wasn't afraid of their judgment. She was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Claire sat at her desk, staring at her phone as notification after notification lit up the screen. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the headlines, each one worse than the last. Charity leaders' dark secrets exposed. Former adult film stars' hidden past revealed. Anonymous source details Claire Mitchell's double life. The article contained private details about her life, things she'd only shared in confidence during team meetings and support sessions. Personal struggles, vulnerable moments, even conversations she'd had behind closed doors. Someone inside the charity had weaponized her trust against her. Sarah, her assistant, burst through the door without knocking. "Claire, have you seen—" "I've seen it." Claire's voice was hollow. She pushed back from her desk, walking to the window that overlooked the city. "They knew about the relapse 3 years ago, about my therapy sessions, things I only discussed in our leadership meetings." "It has to be someone on the inside," Sarah said, her face pale. "Someone with access to your personal files." Claire pressed her forehead against the cool glass. The betrayal cut deep, making her question every interaction, every seemingly supportive smile, every encouraging word. She'd built this place as a sanctuary, a safe space for women to heal and grow. Now it felt tainted. Her phone buzzed again. Another news outlet requesting comment. She switched it off, unable to bear another notification. "Cancel my meetings for the day," she said quietly. I need to think." But thinking was dangerous right now. Her mind raced through possibilities, trying to identify the traitor. Was it Monica from accounting, who always seemed too interested in her personal life, or James from PR, who'd been pushing for more transparency in their messaging? Even Sarah? No, she couldn't start suspecting everyone. That path led to paranoia. The door opened again, and Jake rushed in. His tie was loose, his usually perfectly styled hair disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "I came as soon as I saw," he said, crossing the room to her. "Are you okay?" Claire tried to nod, but the motion turned into a shake of her head. "I trusted them, Jake. All of them. We're supposed to be family here." He placed his hands on her shoulders, turning her to face him. "We'll figure this out. I promise you." The things they revealed. Her voice cracked. "That night when I thought about going back, I only ever told the leadership team about that. It was supposed to show them that recovery isn't linear, that we all struggle sometimes." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Now it's being used to prove I'm unfit to lead." Jake's jaw tightened. "I'll have our security team check the computer systems, see who accessed your files. We'll find out who did this." "What's the point?" Claire sank into her chair. "The damage is done. Everything I've built, all the trust we've established with our clients, who's going to want help from someone who can't even keep their own secrets safe?" "Don't do that," Jake said firmly. "Don't let them make you doubt yourself. The women we help, they know you. They trust you because you're real, because you understand their struggles. This doesn't change that." Claire looked up at him, seeing the fierce determination in his eyes. "How can you still believe in me after all this?" "Because I know you," he said simply. "And I know that every setback only makes you stronger." He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "We're going to find who did this. I promise you that. And when we do, they'll learn that betraying you means dealing with me too." The warmth of his hands anchored her, giving her something solid to hold on to in the storm of emotions. She squeezed his fingers, drawing strength from his unwavering support. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered. "You'll never have to find out." Jake's voice was steady, certain. "We're in this together, Claire. Whatever comes next, whatever we uncover, you're not alone." Claire stood at the front of the conference room, facing the gathered staff and volunteers. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across worried faces. Everyone had read the articles. Everyone knew about the leak. "I won't pretend this hasn't hurt us," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "But I refuse to let this derail our mission. The women we help, they're still counting on us." Jake stood at the back of the room, his presence giving her strength. He nodded encouragingly as she continued. "Starting today, we're going to be more transparent than ever. Not because we have to, but because we choose to. Claire moved to the whiteboard, picking up a marker. I want to hear your ideas. How do we refocus the narrative on what really matters? The women we serve. Sarah raised her hand first. What if we let some of our success stories speak for themselves? With their permission, of course. Show the real impact we're making. Claire wrote it down, the marker squeaking against the board. Good. What else? Monthly open houses, Monica from accounting suggested. Let the public see exactly what we do here. No secrets, no speculation. More ideas flowed. Documentary-style social media content, partnership with other organizations, community outreach programs. Claire's hand could barely keep up with the suggestions. Jake stepped forward. I'll match every donation we receive in the next month, dollar for dollar. The room buzzed with excitement. And I'm putting together a board of advisors, women who've been through our program and succeeded. They'll help guide our decisions moving forward. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest. This was why they'd started, not for headlines or acclaim, but for real change. Over the next few weeks, they implemented their new strategies. Claire worked alongside volunteers to reorganize the charity's structure, making it more inclusive and transparent. They installed new security measures to protect client information while being open about their processes. The women they helped became their strongest advocates. Maria, who'd gone from adult films to owning her own bakery, spoke at their first open house. Her story of transformation brought tears to eyes and hope to hearts. Sophia, now a successful graphic designer, redesigned their website and marketing materials, infusing them with authentic, empowering messages. One afternoon, as Claire reviewed the latest donation reports, Jake knocked on her office door. Have you seen this? He handed her his tablet. A major women's magazine had run a feature on their charity, not about the scandal or Claire's past, but about the lives they'd changed. The article was filled with testimonials from women who'd found new beginnings through their program. They got it right, Claire whispered, scanning the article. They finally got it right. Jake smiled, perching on the edge of her desk. Because we showed them the truth. No spin, no hiding, just real stories of real women. The donations had started picking up, too. Small contributions from individuals touched by their mission, larger grants from organizations impressed by their transparency. Each dollar represented trust being rebuilt. Claire walked through the charity's halls, watching volunteers work with new clients. The atmosphere had changed. There was an energy, a sense of purpose that felt stronger than before. The betrayal had forced them to examine their foundation and build something even more solid. In the common room, a group of women gathered around a table, sharing stories and dreams. Claire paused in the doorway, listening as they encouraged each other. One woman was studying for her real estate license, another starting culinary school. Their laughter echoed off the walls, genuine and free. This is what matters, Jake said softly, appearing beside her. This is what they couldn't destroy. Claire nodded, watching the scene before her. The leaked secrets had tried to define her by her past. But these moments, these transformations happening right in front of her, defined her present and future. The charity wasn't just surviving. It was thriving, powered by the very thing their betrayer had tried to use against them. Truth. The women at the table noticed her and waved her over. As Claire joined them, listening to their hopes and plans, she felt it, the renewed sense of purpose, stronger than ever before. They were more than a charity now. They were a community, bound together by shared experiences and unshakable support. Claire smoothed her navy blazer for the 10th time, standing in Jake's office. The wall-to-wall windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but her attention was fixed on her reflection, checking for any imperfection. Today wasn't just another day at the charity. Jake's family was coming. "They're here," Jake's assistant announced through the intercom. Claire's stomach tightened. She'd faced harsh critics, media scrutiny, and public backlash. But somehow this felt different. More personal. Jake appeared at her side, his hand finding the small of her back. "Remember, you have nothing to prove to them." "Easy for you to say," Claire managed a weak smile. "They're your family." The elevator dinged, and Claire straightened her spine. First through the doors was Richard Maxwell, Jake's father, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, and his tailored suit screaming old money. Behind him came Eleanor Maxwell, Jake's mother, her pearls gleaming, and her expression carefully neutral. Jake's younger sister, Victoria, brought up the rear, tapping away at her phone. "Father, Mother, Victoria," Jake stepped forward. "Welcome to the Hope Transition Foundation." Richard's eyes swept the office, taking in every detail before landing on Claire. "Miss Thompson," he said. His tone clipped. "Mr. Maxwell." Claire extended her hand, keeping it steady despite her nerves. "Thank you for coming to see our work firsthand." Eleanor barely touched Claire's hand, as if afraid something might rub off. "Well, we could hardly ignore the situation any longer." "The situation being my successful charity that's helped dozens of women rebuild their lives?" Jake's voice carried an edge Claire rarely heard. Victoria finally looked up from her phone. "Oh, please. We all know what kind of women." "Victoria." Richard's sharp tone cut her off. "We're here to observe. Nothing more." Claire took a deep breath. "Then let me show you what we actually do here." She gestured towards the door. "Shall we?" As they walked through the facility, Claire pointed out their various programs. The computer lab where women learned new skills, the counseling rooms where they received support, the workshop spaces where they developed business plans. "This is Maria's story." Claire stopped at a wall of success stories. "She now owns 3 bakeries and employs other women from our program." She moved to another photo. "Sarah here just finished her nursing degree." "Impressive credentials," Richard commented, studying the frames. "But surely you understand our concerns about association with—" He trailed off. "With someone like me?" Claire finished, her voice steady. "Someone who made mistakes but chose to turn them into something positive?" Eleanor's perfectly maintained eyebrows rose. "Dear, it's not that simple. Our family has a reputation." "Mother," Jake interrupted, "Claire has built something remarkable here. These women trust her because she understands their struggles. That's what makes this work." They continued the tour, passing a classroom where a financial literacy workshop was in session. Through the window, they could see women engaged in discussion, taking notes, asking questions. "Excuse me, Claire?" A young woman approached, clutching a folder. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had visitors." "It's fine, Rebecca," Claire smiled warmly. "What do you need?" "I got accepted." Rebecca's face lit up as she pulled out an acceptance letter. "The nursing program, they said yes." Claire hugged her, genuine joy radiating from both women. "I knew you could do it. Have you told your kids?" "Not yet. I wanted you to be the first to know. After all, I wouldn't be here without you and Jake." As Rebecca walked away, Claire caught Eleanor watching the interaction with an unreadable expression. "That's what this place is about," Claire said quietly. "Not my past, not your family's reputation. It's about women like Rebecca, who just needed someone to believe in them." Victoria had stopped scrolling through her phone, actually looking around now. Richard's stern expression had softened slightly, and Eleanor's perfectly maintained mask showed cracks of emotion. "Perhaps," Eleanor said slowly, "we may have been hasty in our judgment." Jake squeezed Claire's hand, pride evident in his eyes. The tension in the air had shifted, not completely dissolved, but noticeably lighter. His family might not have fully accepted the situation, but they were beginning to see what he had seen in Claire all along: her strength, her compassion, and her ability to transform lives. Claire stared at the morning paper's headline: "From Scandal to Salvation. How one woman's past became her purpose." Her hands trembled as she read the article, a far cry from the vicious headlines that had haunted her months ago. "I told you they'd come around," Jake said, placing a coffee mug beside her desk. His smile reached his eyes, proud and warm. "I still can't believe it." Claire ran her finger over the words. The article detailed the Hope Transition Foundation's success stories, highlighting the dozens of women who had found new careers and rebuilt their lives. They actually interviewed Rebecca about her nursing program. "Because it's a story worth telling." Jake settled into the chair across from her. "Your story is worth telling." The office buzzed with activity outside her door. Through the glass walls, Claire could see women working at computers, attending workshops, and meeting with counselors. What had started as a small initiative had grown into something bigger than she'd ever imagined. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Another news outlet had picked up the story. This time, it was a video piece featuring interviews with program graduates. Claire pressed play, watching as Sarah, now a successful business owner, spoke about how the foundation had changed her life. "We've got 3 more major donors interested," Jake announced, sliding a folder across her desk. "They were impressed by the success rates. 87% of our participants are now employed in their chosen fields." Claire's eyes widened as she reviewed the numbers. "These pledges would double our operating budget." "Which means double the impact." Jake leaned forward, his expression serious. "Claire, what you've built here, it's extraordinary. You took everything they threw at you, all the judgment and criticism, and you turned it into something powerful." A knock at the door interrupted them. Maria, one of their first success stories, poked her head in. "Claire, the film crew is here for the documentary interview." "Documentary?" Claire looked at Jake questioningly. He shrugged, trying to hide a smile. "PBS wants to feature the foundation in their series about social change. I might have said yes on your behalf." Claire stood, smoothing her skirt nervously. "I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of exposure." "You've been ready for a while now," Jake said softly. "The world needs to hear this story. Your story." The documentary crew set up in the foundation's main conference room. As Claire sat down for the interview, she caught sight of her reflection in the window. Gone was the nervous woman who had walked into Jake's office that first day. In her place sat someone stronger, someone who had found her purpose. The interviewer began with questions about the foundation's beginnings. Claire spoke honestly about her past, about the shame that had once consumed her, and about the moment she decided to help others find their way out. "And what would you say to those who still question your motives?" the interviewer asked. Claire smiled, thinking of all the women who had passed through these doors. "I'd tell them to look at our results. Every woman who walks through those doors is more than her past. They're mothers, sisters, daughters who deserve a second chance. We don't just offer job training, we offer hope." As the interview wrapped up, Jake stepped forward, asking for a moment on camera. Claire watched, curious, as he adjusted his tie and faced the cameras. "I want to make something clear," he began, his voice steady and sure. "The Hope Transition Foundation isn't just another charity project. It represents everything I believe in: the power of second chances, the importance of looking beyond surface judgments, and the incredible strength of human resilience. I'm announcing today my commitment to expand this program nationally. Every major city should have a place where women can find the support they need to rebuild their lives." Claire felt tears welling up as Jake continued, his words painting a vision of hope and transformation. The cameras captured it all, his unwavering support, his determination to make a difference, and the way his eyes kept finding hers as he spoke. The setting sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Jake's office, painting the modern space in warm golden hues. Claire sat on the comfortable leather couch, her heels kicked off, legs tucked beneath her as she scrolled through emails on her tablet. Jake lounged in the adjacent armchair, his tie loosened, jacket draped over his desk chair. "Remember when you first walked in here?" Jake asked, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "You were so prepared for rejection." Claire looked up, returning his smile. "I had my speech all ready about why my past shouldn't matter." She shook her head, remembering. "I never expected to find someone who would see past it without explanation." "I saw strength," Jake said simply. "Still do." The tablet chimed with another notification. Claire glanced down at the screen, her eyes widening. "The London office just confirmed their interest. They want to partner with us to establish a European branch." Jake leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "That would be our first international expansion." His eyes sparkled with excitement. "Think of how many more women we could help." "It's overwhelming sometimes," Claire admitted, setting the tablet aside. "When I think about where I was just a year ago compared to now." She gestured to the wall of framed news articles, each one more positive than the last. "There were days I thought we wouldn't survive the backlash." "Those first few months were rough," Jake agreed. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. "My family nearly disowned me. The board members threatened to resign." He turned back to face her. "But watching you stand your ground, seeing you fight for what you believed in, it made everything worth it." Claire joined him at the window, their shoulders nearly touching. "Your family coming around was a turning point. When your mother volunteered to host that fundraising gala, who would have thought she'd become one of our biggest advocates?" Jake chuckled. "Though I suspect it has more to do with you than me. You have a way of changing people's minds." "We both changed," Claire said softly. "You stood up to your family, broke free from their expectations. That took just as much courage." Jake reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "The foundation changed both our lives in ways we never expected." Claire squeezed his hand, thinking of all the women who had found new paths through their program. The London expansion could be just the beginning. There are so many places where women need this kind of support. "I've been looking into possibilities in Asia," Jake said, pulling out his phone with his free hand. "Singapore has expressed interest, and there's potential in Tokyo." Claire's mind raced with possibilities. "We'd need to adapt the program for different cultures, different challenges." "We can start building the framework," Jake suggested. "Set up pilot programs, gather data on what works in each region." "The documentary will help," Claire added. "It's already generating interest from international organizations." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city come alive with evening activity below. The office behind them held the evidence of their success, awards, testimonials, and most importantly, the pictures of graduates starting their new lives. "Sometimes I wonder," Claire said thoughtfully, "if that first interview was destiny, if we were meant to meet, to create all of this together." Jake turned to face her fully. "I don't know about destiny, but I do know that meeting you changed everything. You showed me what real courage looks like." "You showed me what unconditional support feels like," Claire countered, "even when everyone else doubted us." Jake pulled out a folder from his desk. "Speaking of support, I've been working on something. Initial plans for our global expansion strategy." He spread the documents across his desk. "I think we're ready to take this worldwide." Claire moved closer, examining the detailed proposals. Each page represented a new opportunity, a chance to reach more women who needed help. Where do we start?